It's now 5 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting of the WISD Board of Trustees to order. Please let the record show that all 7 of our trustees are present, and some are just over in our boardroom. And this meeting has been duly called, and notice of the meeting has been duly posted for time and manner required by law. To let you guys know, we're fixing to try a different format on how we're going to format our meeting. So we're going to move our closed session up to the beginning. We're going to come back out of closed session, and then we're going to go into our board workshops. We're going to try something different so people don't have to stay necessarily so late to find out what's happening with all of our HR decisions. So at this time, we will convene into closed session according to Texas Education Code Section 551.001 at SEC. It is 5 o'clock. Thank you. Now 8:06, we will reconvene back into open session. At this time, I'll ask Mr. Schoolfield to lead us in our invocation, followed by Ms. Kriegel with our pledges. I'm sorry, 6:06. 6:06.
Shall we pray? Father, thank you for the opportunity you give us to serve in our community. I ask that you bless the people in this room as well as those in our town and school district as we try to do what's best and serve you. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, the first item on our agenda will be our human resources.
Good evening, Board. I would like to ask that you approve the personnel report as recommended by the superintendent. And we have some administrators here to be recognized.
Okay. First, I would like to recognize the Turner Pre-K principal. Happens to be a former student of mine, Veronica Schaefer. And company. Okay. You go ahead with the next.
And the other administrator we have here is Jessica Nelson, and she will be an assistant principal at Westbrook.
Okay. Board, at this time, I entertain a motion to approve the HR report.
Make the motion to approve the HR report as presented in executive session.
Motion by Ms. Kriegel, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Starnader. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, next item will be recognitions. Ms. Bridges, I believe we have a house full of people.
Good evening, Board. As you probably know, we celebrated back in May with Wildman STEAM Academy as they earned the distinction of being just the third campus in the nation to receive a national campus certification for STEM excellence, along with a national certification for STEM teaching for all classroom teachers and administrators from the National Institute for STEM Education. We wanted to bring them in front of you in our community and recognize them for their hard work and their achievement. So as I call your name, if you'll please come forward. Glenna Reisner, Chris Burkhalter, Debbie Davis, Laura Hargrove, Sarah Barato, Kimberly Robinson, Shelley Davis, Hannah Montgomery, Sarah Jordan, Amber Reeves, Sarah Block, Karen Davidson, Jennifer Nash, Yolanda Powell, Tanya Johnson, Patty Harris, Haley Osborne, Shannon Fulmer, Jessica Nelson, Randy Loafman, Lace Trout, Chris Garrison, Haley Tucker, Jessica Otterson, Timothy Green, Everett Johnson, Laura Zerfus, Kate Othier, and Karen Polk. Let's give them a round of applause. Oh, and Melissa Abity, I'm sorry. Can you guys act like you all like each other and get together too? Okay, sure. Sorry for that. Congratulations. No, you are welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but no one will be offended if you leave.
For those of you who are leaving, you might want to tune in here in about an hour or so. There might be some interesting information coming out. Okay, at this time, we're going to begin our board workshop. First item on our agenda would be the update regarding our Title IX compliance. Is you, Mr. Reed?
Okay, so this workshop is just an opportunity to present to you guys where we are in the Title IX request that we received back in April. First, just a little bit of a chronology leading up to where we are. Swipe, there we go. Okay, so if we go back to August 17th, and this is the 26th here, but on August 17th is we were notified first by OCR that there was a complaint that had been filed that had to do with this information, that WIC discriminates on the basis of sex against female athletes. Specifically, the complainant alleged that the district is in violation of Title IX with regard to its high school athletics program because it does not provide equitable locker rooms, equipment, and supplies, awards, coaches' pay, stipends, practice and competitive facilities with respect to male and female athletes. Immediately following that, the OCR on the 26th, they were notified by the district that we were ready to pursue a voluntary resolution. They wanted us to go ahead and present that information. So on the 15th, Mr. Auditing led a very strong crew of people that he put together to find all the information, and we submitted that to the OCR on the 15th. We came back in February of 2017, just after that, and gave a little more additional information that we did not have when we first submitted it. And then we fast forward to 2018. It had been several months since we had heard anything. And on the 18th, we corresponded with OCR to make sure they understood that we still desired the resolution, the voluntary resolution. And then finally, on April 18th of 2019, we received notification that they would approve the voluntary resolution. On the 10th, they provided a letter to WISD that on effective May 10th, 2019, OCR would close the investigation regarding the complaint submitted to WISD on August 17th of 2016. So fast forward many years to this is where we are today. We're very confident in what we provide as a district, have an incredible crew of coaches who provide feedback, provide opportunity to have open discussions about what our needs are, what our assessments are. There's nobody in our staff that's afraid to come forward and talk to me about what needs need to be met or what may be coming down the line. So in the opportunity to talk about this resolution agreement, if this is a workshop, if we have questions later, we can answer that. If Mr. Auditing needs to speak to anything that we're doing, he can do that as well. So the next thing I'll do, that's the chronology, is talk about the resolution agreement and what that looks like. It's set up in 5 parts, and each part has a specific due date. And when we're looking at Section 1 deals with the opportunity to receive coaching assignments and compensation of coaches. So it's a pretty broad set of information, and I'll show some data samples at the end as we're going through this. This is not going to be officially submitted until January of 2020. So we've got a few months to continue to do this. So things we're looking at is availability. Do we have female athletes so they have the same availability of coaching that the male athletes have? It's the same thing with the assignment, the training, the experience, the credentials, the professional standing of that coach, whether that's an organization or some type of award, how they stand in their own professional organization. And then we also look at the compensation, the contract structures, and all the duties that are assigned for those coaches. That's section 1. Section 2 has to do with the provision of equipment and supplies. And we're looking not only at quantity, but we're looking at the availability. Is it readily there? Is it suitable? Is it maintained? And do we have a replacement process for that equipment or those supplies when it's time to replace them? And I'll show you some samples of that as well. This one, February 30th of 2020. Section 3, this has to do with the provision of locker rooms, practice, and competitive facilities. This one also is in February of 2020. That's at the 30th. When I saw 28th, I went, I think that's supposed to be the 3rd.
We'll do it by the 29th.
What you're saying is this report's never going to be.
So much for an official report. Let's just act like that slide didn't happen. Good grief. Even in a leap year, that doesn't count. In the provision of locker rooms, practice, and competitive facilities, we're looking at the quality, again, amount, availability, how suitable it is, how it's prepared, how it's maintained, the number of locker rooms, even as so far as possibly square footage when you're comparing the right sports, and the practice and competitive facilities again. Okay, the fourth section has to do with student awards. This could range from the certificates you receive at a banquet to a letterman jacket. And there are specific guidelines under UIL requirements that we have to be careful of when we're dealing with this area, because you can't just give students anything. And then lastly, section 5 has to do with staff training. And I will begin with Mr. Auvenshine and probably Mrs. James, as well as Mr. Calden and Dr. Kane, to talk about what that's going to look like in the culmination of this in December of 2020. So these are just some examples of data. So from section 1, when you're talking about availability of coaching, one of the things that addressed is what does it look like on the experience level of female coaches, of coaches of female sports and of male sports. And this is just kind of an example of what I've done is gone through and look at the 50 plus coaches at the high school and just list out information of what that looks like. And this is just 3 examples of providing the years of experience, what their degree is, the type of experience they've had in coaching athletes at different level, like this example of a coach having a state track meet in multiple jumping events. And then you have an example of a 4-year coach. He just has his degree and he's a member of the Coaches Association. That's okay too. We're growing those folks. And then another example of someone with 28 experience. Not a head coach currently, but they were. So all these things are factors that we look at and rely on to say, yeah, we've got some excellent coaches. We're not just looking at one side of the gender or one side of a sex or another. We feel like everybody has equal experience in what they're receiving. Okay, this one, I'm going to pinch that. Okay, so this one has to do with kind of reporting numbers. This has to do with the last 2 school years and the number of athletes we had in the program, with the number of coaches and the number of teams. Again, this is just an example of a table of some of the things we'll be providing and reviewing as we go through this resolution agreement. This is a data sample. We talked about reporting inventory. This is just an example from tennis. Every coach was submitted a Google Doc or Google form, and they were required to go through and submit everything that they possibly had in storage. Every stitch of cloth, every helmet, every ball, anything that was part of the equipment that they used in their storage for games, for practices, we reported it. And not only do we report it, we want to know what kind of condition it's in. What's the age of it? Does it need replaced? So these are all things that are not out of the ordinary. This is stuff that we normally do. We just put it into a form where everybody could see it, all of our coaches, and then we can go through and update that annually as needed. When you're dealing with locker rooms, this comes from a year ago. We were getting into the new locker rooms at the high school. It just talks about the distribution of the programs, where that locker room is located, the number of lockers that are provided. And we even go through data that's not even reported yet. I mean, in May, I had no coaches complaining about anything in regards to the new facility over there at the high school. I said, surely we got to find something. So I start texting and saying, does anybody have anybody sharing lockers? Who has this? Well, we found a few in some of the programs that they were doubling up in a couple of areas. So that's the kind of things we find when we ask questions among our coaches. Even when they don't have anything to offer, we have to be intentional about it to gain that information to see what we can do better. So that will also be included in this as we go through it. This is an example of the survey that we provided to coaches, high school coaches, and to student athletes. And this kind of gives you an idea of just at least 3 examples of the questions of how things have come back. And when you look at the entire survey, I think there was one question that came back with an 80, I'm going to call an approval rating in strongly agree to agree. That's what I call approval in my simplistic view of this. And the lowest one we had on a question was 89%. Everything was easily in the 90 to 92. You had some in the 95 to 98. But these are just 2 examples of how we do it. And the aggregate is just a combination of the coach's response and the student's response combined. This is an example from the awards. And again, this is information we do annually anyway. So that's kind of the summary. This is really what this was. There's nothing to report as of today. This is an ongoing process, as you can see. If you have any kind of questions that we can answer, we can definitely try to do that. But ultimately, if you've got a daughter and you're looking for a place for them to go in an athletic department, not that that should be your only choice, there's no better place for your daughter to be than WISD. I mean, the facilities are outstanding. Their coaches' experience are there. The number of coaches they had to work with are there and above. The compensation that they receive for doing their job is very competitive. And the equipment that they use to go out and get better and prepare, it's going to rival anybody. And we would welcome any kind of comparison with our peers to what we're doing in our district in comparison to others. So with that, again, it was a summary. It's kind of fast, but if you have other questions down the line, come see us or Mr. Aubenshine.
Mr. Reed, could you send me my email, the presentation, please?
This summary?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Greg, just to be clear,
Other board members.
Actually, just send it to the entire board if you don't mind.
Okay.
to be clear, is this still ongoing, or I think your second slide hinted to the fact there was nothing, the OCR said there's nothing to see here, or is it still ongoing?
I'm not going to speak for them because I don't think the OCR's job is to ever come back and say, you're the model city or the model school for what Title IX is.
But I can answer.
Go ahead.
Mr. Rogers, the resolution agreement ends OCR's investigation. So ultimately, there is no live investigation. The matter with OCR is closed with our participation in the resolution agreement. So we have a resolution agreement that allows us to do this introspective look, analyze everything we've got in regard to the 5 items listed that Mr. Reed has gone through, and then show our efforts. The scope of the resolution agreement is high school, but we will look at our junior high programs too, and where we see room for improvement, we will make recommendations and make those improvements. But ultimately, that's our voluntary effort. If we ever breach our agreement to go through the resolution agreement, if we just didn't meet those terms, didn't submit the reports, then OCR could come back to us, give us an opportunity to cure. That's what's within the agreement. If we failed to cure, then take additional action. But there is no ongoing investigation, and there is no repercussion from the 2015 or 16 concern. It would just be an analysis of our efforts 2019 going forward.
Any other questions for Mr. Reed? Mr. Aubenshine? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next item on the board workshop will be security handbook for 2019-2020. That's you, Mr. Aubenshine, correct?
Grant?
Well, in case my reputation precedes me, I will make an effort to be brief, Mr. President. I have
Thank
provided
you over that.
our coordinator of safety and security, Eric Kyle, and I have worked together and prepared a model handbook and guidelines for our officers this year. It's been provided to you. Parts of it detail the manner in which the district will respond to items pertaining to safety and security. So it's a confidential report that's not been published online. I'm here to address any questions you may have. It is our intent for our officers to follow these procedures for the upcoming school year.
Anybody have any questions?
Go ahead, Kim.
Go ahead. I have some as well, so go right ahead.
I just have a question about the page 17, the junior high security at ball games and not having any. And I wanted to be sure, and also the security at, other than basketball and football games, because, I mean, we have had compliance issues with the UIL because of, security issues, and I just really have an issue with that.
Board, some of this was, we were looking at our overtime, and there seems to be, I'm the one who actually is looking at this more closely. We can spend as much money as the district wants on security. And the security budget is getting, in my mind, out of hand. We can be playing a game and hardly anyone attends, and we have a lot of security people there. So in my mind, we were not using judgment. There are certain teams we play that we need the whole security force. We also have the option that the campuses have a budget, and it's always easier to spend somebody's money. When it's not coming out of your budget, it's like, yeah, we needed the whole security team everywhere. Also, our administrators, part of what they get paid for is to be on duty and to say, let's just get security to do this, was something that I'm looking at. Now, if the board says there's no limit, or we shouldn't be looking at that, I'm okay with that because we always work at the board's discretion. So, example, the elementary security guards, if the principal would like them there at night, if they wanted them there at night whenever there's no limit on the budget, but should there be, if you want totally open borders on security budget, you just need to let me know.
And I'll address.
I'm going to go ahead. I'm sorry. You go ahead.
And I'll address at least known concerns. So in the years I've been with the district, the 5 years I've been with the district, I don't know of a concern, an incident where security was absolutely needed at a junior high game. But the junior high principals do have the discretion. All of them will be responsible for being administrators on duty. And so at Coleman Junior High, you have a principal and 3 assistant principals. So you've got 4 administrators. Howard and Findlay each have one principal, 2 assistant principals. So between our 3 junior highs, you've got 10 administrators who can serve as administrator on duty. And they will be responsible for being there as administrator on duty. I don't know of a specific event where security was absolutely essential to protect and secure a junior high game. But in the event,
Someone said, we're going to fight. Oh, no, there's a security guard.
and so you have athletic staff and you have administrator on duty. In the event the principal, though, desires to have security at the game, that principal has the discretion to work out a flexible schedule with their security officer, meaning if there's a 3-hour after-school duty, game duty that's desired, 3 hours that could be carved out of the 40-hour week and avoid overtime. So that's a for instance on junior high. In regard to high school, DEC, ultimately in each district, so we're UIL 6A, District 6, our DEC agreement just says that the home team is responsible for security, but it doesn't define what that looks like. And so we will have full security at all home varsity football games, the whole staff present. In regard to basketball and volleyball games, it's stated that you'll have 2 officers. that's not the only limit to the number of security that can be present. In fact, as we get into the year, working with Mr. Averitt, working with Ms. Harris, if it's desired, now that the board has given us 6 security officers, that we essentially maintain 4 officers every day and 2 officers beginning an afternoon evening shift, we can make that a more regular shift to cover JV football, to cover baseball, softball, and not incur overtime. But the goal is to try to avoid overtime. In regard to UIL requires an administrator on duty. It requires the district to take action to keep things safe and secure. But at our games, our high school games, I believe 2 security officers is a good start. Now, if there's a particular game where we believe that we'll have more visitors than, say, we're playing one of the Mansfield schools or one of the Grand Prairie schools that doesn't bring a whole lot of attendance, but if we're playing a school, a one high school town that's bringing more in attendance, we can make a case-by-case determination and try to ensure that we're being proactive, and we can continue to analyze this during the year. But it is the goal, as expressed to you by your superintendent, to really be prudent in the allocation of our resources so that we make sure that we allocate the lion's share of our resources towards instruction.
And we also don't want mission creep. Security was to be in addition to administration and keeping order. It's not meant for, well, let's have more security and then administration can back off. It was in addition to. And so we want to also make certain there's not mission creep.
I kind of mirror Ms. Kriegel's concern. I attend a lot of junior high sporting events, and I've seen many issues, specifically at basketball, not so much at football, but basketball. And unfortunately, the majority of the issues are when we're playing each other. It's not necessarily one of our other schools. I mean, it is embarrassing, but and it's usually not the kids. It's usually the parents. And I really would like to see the junior high sporting events, at least on some level, and I covered. And I understand that it'd be up to the principal, but they need to be.
Well, no, we want to do the board's wish. I mean, this was our idea, this is mine, okay, with some input. I'm okay with the board saying, good, you got a good start there. Here's exactly what we want to see. So be specific, and it will look just like that.
We have some junior high principals here. I know we've got 2. You guys want to give me some input on this?
I'm not doing football games without security, so we gotta make it work, but I'm not gonna run football without security. I mean, we're there. I don't want y'all to get the impression that we're not there as administrators. We're there every night, but I'm not gonna run football without security.
What about basketball?
I feel better about the gym sports without security, but
Really?
I'm not gonna run football without security. Especially now at the high school, they're all gonna be closer. When we played at Bauman, they were a little bit more spread out.
And I believe on the high school nights, the nights where you're playing at the high school, those will be nights that we can utilize the 2 evening officers from the high school to help support that.
Okay, so that would be in our rules, that when the junior highs play one another in football, we will have the 2 extra guys. So would that take care of it? Okay, so we got that.
Because we're not playing Wildman Field anymore. We're playing games there at high school and Lumpkins.
Okay, so
I think for the games for Lumpkins, it's just such a large, big venue that it's, you have one principal and you're covering the bottom. We need somebody to cover the top, I would think.
we got 2. I mean, now, okay, so put that in. Change that, so that's
And
good.
what about the gym sports? That's where I've actually seen the majority of the issues, specifically at JW.
Now, the good news, when you have, you said the intra-district, I mean, we will have 2 administrators.
Yeah,
Okay.
we've got that there. This is being in addition to that.
But frankly, I've attended as many gym sports as probably anybody, and traditionally, when the referee calls for a parent or whatever that needs to be respected, I've seen, can't think of your last name,
Well, one of
Greg,
our
I'm
security
sorry.
officers.
I've seen Greg motion to the security guard to go escort the parent out, and that, it being a security guard rather than Coach Reed or Mr. Reed going over himself. I mean, I think it's better handled. But How many years ago was it that we were on one strike away from the UIL? I mean, because we were pretty much named an unsafe for us to come here because of a series of incidences that are not without the realm of possibility. And frankly, I believe 2 of them were soccer. You know, and nothing is in here about soccer.
I'm just ready for the board to say, here's how many we want at every event, and that's what we'll have.
Well, I think, could we table this and discuss it? You know, like you get some,
Yeah, that would be my thing. My 2 worlds are colliding right here. My safety and my frugalness are colliding right here. But I would like to look at some options for.
I mean, I agree
Just quit it cold turkey,
that your overtime
you know.
has probably gotten out of hand. I completely understand the
And
rationale
I've been on
behind
both sides
this.
of that deal. I know how
I do,
it
but
goes.
I also don't want to tell a parent that your kid got hurt because we decided to cut back on security and we didn't have security. at the
But then we
basketball.
could have 3 there, and if they get hurt, I mean, at what point would it have not happened?
I understand.
So-
Something we've got to figure out.
But we also could look at, instead of overtime, we could, like what Mr. Allenstein
Right.
said, we
Get
have
creative.
additional staff,
Sure.
because it's actually cheaper. And it could be just the night activities, you know, these are the people who work the night activities, except the football games would have everybody there regardless of how many we.
And this is not an action item. This is just a discussion in,
Right.
But I want the feedback, or, I'm sorry, I thought I had that on. Or we'd want the feedback. I mean, we want the feedback, or we wouldn't have brought it to you, even though, like President Autry said, it's not an action item.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I don't have to have it in specific numbers, but maybe an idea of what we're doing on overtime, because typically in business, if I'm eating everything up on overtime, it might be time for me to hire somebody
Right.
else with better allocation of dollars. I don't know.
And with the resources the board's given us at the high school, I do believe we will be taking care of the high school.
I
We
don't
don't
think-
have the extra officer for junior high, except for when the junior high's playing at the high school.
I don't think we were thinking of these other sports too. I mean, I'm hearing there's concern about every sport, so we'll need to look at.
mine was specifically football and basketball. And you heard from Mr. Cavazos, he said he's going to have security at every football
Everything
game.
except tennis and swimming. And golf. Oh, no, that's a pretty rough
I
golf.
think that's what we need to talk more about, is what specifically we want to target.
Okay.
But I
So,
Yes,
let's bring us back at our next workshop. Can we do that?
Mr. Allenstein, don't change anything until we have this resolved, okay? That way we will do a stay put.
Okay.
With our additional people, because I would much rather do a stay put and have time to resolve it than don't do it, than you feeling rushed that you have to do something. So, and then I'll have Mr. Calden bring the security budget and, you want to see the whole thing. Well, yeah, I thought.
Any other questions for Mr. Robinson?
So we'll put this on the workshop agenda in August, but again, if we don't bring enough information, but we'll do a stay put until then. Okay, August.
All right,
Thank you,
thank you,
Dr.
sir.
Kane. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Okay, next item is partial response to parent concerns regarding dual credit and elementary off-campus physical activity programs. Mr. Averett?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Last board meeting, we had a parent that voiced some concerns about the use of the grade conversion chart in EIC Local for dual credit courses from Navarro. As we were looking into that, we actually had a meeting scheduled with Navarro Dual Credit. Right after that meeting, we brought that up with them, and they informed us that beginning this fall, they're going to a new grading software that will provide a numerical grade as well as a letter grade. And all we have to do is ask them for the numerical grade for any students in a dual credit class, whether they're taught by an adjunct on our campus or by our own staff. And so it's our position. I've talked to our attorney about it and asked if there are any issues with us going forward and taking that numeric grade, the straight numeric grade versus using the grade conversion chart. She said there would not be. Our only real job to do going forward is to make sure that we inform teachers, students, parents, how we're going to take those grades coming forward. So it is our position that we will ask Navarro to provide a numeric grade for any student in a dual credit class, and the grade that will be applied to the student's transcript for that course will be that numeric grade.
You good?
Any questions, Mr. Averett, on that?
I defer to my three school teachers up there. Is that, easiest, best way to do it?
Yeah. Mhm. But you shouldn't get less of a grade than you deserve, but you also shouldn't get more of a grade than you deserve. And that's kind of what the 95 did. This, if you make a 92, you make a 92. If you make a 98, you make a 98.
Exactly. So our job will be to make sure that our students understand that if they make a 92, they get a 92, that they don't get a 95. And if they make a 98, they get a 98, they don't get a 95. That's our job to communicate that. And I've already provided Mrs. Harris with instructions on how I want her to do that.
Perfect.
Next up, we do have just an update on the elementary PE waiver discussion that was at the last workshop. Remember, Coach Reed did provide the response from Barney Fudge from TEA regarding that there are no exemptions, substitutions, or waivers for elementary PE. It was discussed in that workshop that other school districts around us were actually providing that exception. We reached out to folks that we knew at 3 local districts that were mentioned, Midlothian, Red Oak, and Palmer. And according to those representatives from those districts, they have not been issuing a PE waiver for grades K through 5. That grade 6 and above they have had. In fact, one of the districts used our form. They called us to ask how to do that with a secondary student. That was Palmer. So, and I spoke with Steve Kiesler, who's the current AD at South Lake Carroll, who was the AD at Midlothian for the past 10 years. And Coach Reed spoke with the AD at Red Oak over this issue. So right now, no, they are not allowing that and have not been.
But again, if a parent says in X school district it's happening and Miss Someone, we will say, tell us the name of the class, because we didn't know what was happening here until they said it was happening at Shack. So it could be that too. But even if we find that out and say, yes, that did happen, that's not a district practice. It's an exception. So we haven't found a district that it is their practice.
Just because they're doing it doesn't mean it's legal. I mean, if the
Right,
UIL
right.
says it doesn't exist.
Well, and the administration does not know it.
Right.
It's happening some other way.
Dr. Averett, I have been told that Long Branch Elementary in Midlothian was doing this. Until tonight, the administration might not know, but I have been told that Long Branch is doing it, just so you know.
Check that school.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Averett? Thank you very much, sir.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Okay, next item, suggested mission statement. Are you, Ms. Bridges?
So, Board, we've been hearing for a little while that people thought our current mission statement might be a little cumbersome, need to be a little more straightforward. So to refresh you, our current mission statement is the following. Continuing our tradition of excellence in education, the mission of the Waxahachie Independent School District is to develop, through a cooperative effort with the home and community, well-educated, responsible citizens who can excel in a complex world. That is a long sentence, and it is a great mission, but when our admin team got together a couple weeks ago for our annual admin retreat, we worked through a branding exercise where we chose words that we really felt described Waxahachie ISD. Once we had narrowed down those words, we all worked together to come up with a suggested new mission statement, which is Waxahachie ISD's dynamic, focused educational experiences will produce graduates who will positively impact the world. We were really excited about that, and hope that you all have good feedback on it as well.
And how many administrators were there at that meeting?
I think we had about 55 people there that day. So it was from the district level, it was associate directors and above, and then from the campus level, it was principals and assistant principals. So it was a large group. Thank you. I should have mentioned that.
So I don't think anything the board, if the board can either say this is good or back to the drawing board.
I like it as well. It's all encompassing.
Good. Excellent. Thank y'all.
Can I add something? I'm sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
I like it, and I would just like to suggest that we look at our goals as well and figure out how to package all of that and put it out there,
Actually,
put it
I put
everywhere.
that goal on that, and then I even put the mantra, which is, what was it that Dr. Speed says, student behavior doesn't change till adult behaviors change. And then the goals, I was talking to Ms. Mott and Dr. Averett and Dr. Holt about bringing that entire document. So yes, we're we're good to go, and to go over how we met those goals that the board set last year. It just seems like there's not enough time to do all this stuff, but
So we will get this updated on our website, on our student calendars for next year, and thank you very much for your feedback.
Thank you. Okay, next item under reports will be method of elections, our final review. Mr. Alvin.
Mr. President.
it is not our final review, okay?
Right.
We have some board members who are going to be out in August, so you're going to have the opportunity twice more in August to present this and ask if there's any questions.
Excellent, excellent. So just so y'all are aware, we initially presented this to you on June 10th, then again on June 24th. On July 8th, we brought Christine Badillo of Walsh Gallegos to discuss this. Information regarding this proposal has been published in the Waxahachie Daily Light. So it's been thoroughly discussed by you as a board, been discussed within the community. Ultimately, what you have is the at-large method presently. You don't have to do anything to keep the at-large method. Should you ultimately determine that you want to join the other large school districts, similarly sized school districts in Region 10, to have election by position in place, under Election Code 11.058 C through F, all you have to do is approve a resolution and ultimately amend local policy BBB. And so I will be prepared to bring that to you
In September.
in September for action. Should you have any questions now?
Mr. Robinson, just to clarify, will we be dividing the district up in sections so each representative represents a section?
And so that is another option, but that has not been the option that this board has discussed. So single member districts typically.
No, that won't happen.
Okay.
That's
No,
not-
that is not a proposal.
That's not on this proposal. It
So
is
the
not to have.
position of position place are then 7 at-large districts. Ultimately, once the board adopts by resolution and amends BBB local, you would essentially then draw for places. Now, you would remain on your current terms. And so those of you who were elected this past year to a 3-year term, you would stay in that cycle. Those who were elected to a 2-year term 3 years ago would remain on that cycle. And the 3 of you who were elected last year, I mean, you stay on your cycle, but the actual number that you're assigned, you would draw that number. So it wouldn't just be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You would have random numbers, but you would keep your same terms.
Any other questions, Mr. Alvin?
I have one. I wasn't here at the last meeting. You had mentioned getting some feedback from the community. Did we get any? Did we send out any surveys or anything of that nature?
We haven't sought a survey, but I know that the Waxahachie Daily Light, and I don't know if the Waxahachie Sun, but I know the Waxahachie Daily Light has published the report that the board received. I know that this is something that, with you having now discussed it at your 4th public meeting in a row, we've not generated any kind of poll or anything along those lines.
Did Wash Gallegos bring some pro-con stuff with them?
Yes, they
Could I
did.
get that? I don't know if I got any of that or not.
Also, before we take a formal vote on this, we're going to have at least one public hearing. And the way it looks, we're going to have 2. One at our next meeting in August, and we'll have one before we take action in September. Actual formal hearing.
Ms. McCutcheon, would it be, what if Jeff could clip the TV part of that? Because she didn't hand out as much as she talked. And if you could just get him that section. In fact, why don't you send them all, just because if you're going to do it, it's easier to send it to all 7.
It's up on YouTube.
Okay, just get that part and send it to all of them so that you will have it. And then if someone asks you, is that from Morse Gallegos?
Yeah.
And asking you shall receive. Boy, y'all are good down there. You got to print
Any other questions for Mr. Alvin?
Get a star. You got a star.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, next item will be a budget update. Mr. Calden, you just start working on this yesterday?
Yes, sir. Stayed up all night.
Put that on his shirt.
All right, board, at your spots, you have a copy of the budget book for the 1920 school year. give it to you now, ask that you look over it. If you have questions, please let me know. We'll have a meeting in August before the meeting that we'll ask for adoption of the budget. It's still semi-fluid. We can still make adjustments based off your recommendations. But just kind of let you know where we stand at the budget. For your knowledge and for anyone watching or listening, included within this budget is a tax rate reduction as mandated by House Bill 3. The overall tax rate would go down about 6.5%. There's also a proposed raise for all staff members. The average increase for those on the teacher, librarian, counselor, nursing scale would be about $5,200. A 5.5% increase for auxiliary, paraprofessional, and support personnel, and a 2% increase for administrative and professional personnel. There's also been numerous additional positions created to help our students and our campuses. And then all debt service payments would be moved into the interest and sinking fund. We would not be using any of the revenues from the tax swap anymore going forward out of the M&O fund to make those debt service payments. Overview, general fund revenues, you'll see a large increase in revenues and expenditures in the general fund. So from 18-19, we were looking at about $83 million worth of budgeted revenues. Next year it'd be about $93 million. That's a 12.35% increase. You will see a large chunk of that is in state revenues, which are going to go up approximately 22.5% as a result of House Bill 3. And then on the expenditure side, it is a little bit different. I'll explain why in just a second, but you're looking at the revised budget right now of $87.9 million going up to $92 million next year, an increase of 5%. The reason the expenditure numbers on this page is different than the revenue is because this includes the agri-science facility. So when you are comparing current budget to next year's budget, your expenditure budget will be different than the revenue budget. But as a little note at the bottom of this page, you're looking at about the same budgetary increase for revenues and expenditures. We did have a balanced budget last year. The budget that is being presented to you at this point, 19-20 budget, is not balanced. There is about $1 million more in revenue than there are expenditures. The reason behind that is we are trying to pump up fund balance a little bit. So it is intentional, but if it is at the pleasure of the board, that can always be adjusted as well going into next year. Just to let you know, taxable values.
Mr. Collins, that's mostly because of Max, to open up Max, to know the...
That is what we intend to use the monies for, but we would like to put it into fund balance if we can. The goal is going to be building up fund balance again. Not that we're in a bad spot, we're just in a spot where we would like to build it up because as you've seen with demographic reports, we have a lot of changes coming on the horizon, and the biggest benefit we can have in our pocket is fund balance. So that's kind of where we're going. But yes, ma'am, it would be to help with the Max Simpson opening. Taxable values this year from the appraisal district, you'll see taxable values are up again. I don't know that anybody in this room is overly surprised by that. But with our decrease in tax rate, homeowners will see a smaller increase in their tax bill than they would have otherwise seen with the rates increase. Taxable values have increased 9.8% on average. The average increase in taxes is a little over 2.5%. So the reduction in that tax rate is really going to help out our homeowners by not seeing that massive increase from the appraised value increase. And then just a quick reminder of the budget adoption schedule. Tonight you're getting the budget book. We'll have a meeting on the 12th and again on the 26th. The 26th is where we will ask for adoption of the budget and tax rate for the next school year, and then September 1st that budget would take effect. So with that, really any questions you may have, again, this really is a fluid document, so we can make some changes before it gets published and posted.
I just had one question on the first slide.
Yes, ma'am.
What was the other? Why did that go down? I mean, the amount went down. Let's see, now the first slide, one more. No? Okay.
This one?
Let's see. Okay. So you're projecting that we won't get any additional
So on the federal revenues, federal revenues really from our standpoint is the SHARS program, the School Health and Related Services. The reason we don't budget an increase on that one is because we've hit $2 million pretty steadily for the last couple of years. The more we pump into that number, if we miss our target because our services are not being provided to eligible students, or let's just pretend somehow the federal program or federal government did away with the program,
Right.
we wouldn't want to put ourselves in a bind to where we were wholly dependent on that money.
Right.
So to be quite honest with you, federal revenue in the general fund will be a little bit higher than 2 million, but not enough significantly to make wholesale personnel decisions off of. So we just kind of keep budgeting it at 2 million a year.
Okay, I just found that curious.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions for Mr. Calden?
The 6.5%, that translates into 10 cents this year and 15 next year, or vice versa?
It is about 10 cents this year. It would be an additional 3 or 4 cents next year. So overall, you're looking at about 14 cents from where we currently sit in a tax rate. Going forward, though, TEA is going to be the one that's going to be advising us on what our tax rate will be, and then we'll get to adopt it. So I don't want to go too much further out from there, because that's where they pick up and start reviewing what our values are and what our tax rate should be. When I say they will be assigning a tax rate, they tell us what we can. If we go above it, they get everything above what they say. So it doesn't really behoove us to set it above their rate.
Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Calden.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Project manager report and construction update. Mr. Craig?
Every time I drive by both places, it's looking like you're actually working.
Absolutely.
I told him earlier he was way too clean to be working on a construction project.
A construction worker, yeah, I've never seen one look quite this spiffy.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I did go home and change. We're making great progress. We really are. I can safely say that we are on schedule, and we're gaining time now on the Simpson Elementary School. We're getting back ahead again. We were just a little bit behind for a little while. I wanted to show you a quick cafeteria area. Step over here. Show you a little closer. Right. Now here, back to that area. We've been doing 290 years in the pocket before the next back. So see the forms that concrete is rescue. That forms the bottom. And then they're using these steel forms. It's too nice to sleep and so back over there to the right, that's the gym area. And then we have the cafeteria to the east. And all the way back to the know it doesn't look like it much now, but trust me, that's what that is. And so, and then I have a quick PowerPoint here I want to show you. If you look up there, they actually started the drive today. These machines that do this are amazing. These graders, we just look at them, take them for granted. That's all GPS. It's all operated by GPS. All that guy and that maintainer is doing is driving it. The blade is controlled by GPS, and they get it perfect, absolutely perfect. So you can see on the left this is on the east side of the building, and that's that circle driveway, and the buses will be taking that route as they come in. Now, did you say rock and roll? On the west side of this, we are 2 feet down and we hit solid rock and we don't get out of it. So they're cutting everything into rock. All of the storm sewer, everything's in rock. All of our everything's, and it is very tough. And just more forms, and you can see at the bottom of that on the left picture there, right at the bottom, you can see all of those what we call stiff legs on those forms. All of that has to be taken out. Can't leave that. And look on the right, see that those are little plastic liners? That prevents the soil from going back up underneath those beams so that we don't have any lift from the soil. You know how wonderful our soil is when it gets wet, how much it swells. This is the agri-science structure. We have one more pour Thursday morning, if everything goes right, and we will have the structures done. That'll have the concrete done except for the tie-in in between each one. That'll get us up to a total of about 1,650 cubic yards of concrete when we get that done. Then they will immediately clean up all of the debris around and start doing driveways. We have steel that'll be coming in on the 16th, the 23rd, and the 29th is when we get the steel in. Behind Coleman and to the side of Coleman, we have parking lots. If you're out in that area, please don't park there tomorrow or the rest of the week because you will get an emulsion liquid on your cars tomorrow and the next day, and then we're going to pave that, and so you might get a big yellow machine right over the top of your car, or maybe black asphalt on there. So that's going to be wonderful. Coleman roof, that's what it looks like now. And I had sent pictures to you all, the before and after. Quite a difference. We're waiting right now on the warranty company to come in, and as soon as they give us the okay, then we're fully covered for 20 years on that. And then lastly, the health science department, the walls are in good shape. They'll be painting those tomorrow, and we'll get the data hooked up and the electrical in. It takes probably about 4 more days, and that should be just about wrapped up. And that is it. Questions that I can answer? Well, great.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much, Mr. Craig.
You're welcome.
Great job. I'm telling you, we are great.
Okay, next item on our agenda will be our consent agenda. We have items A through E. We can take these all in one motion. We can take them individually, or if there's a particular item that you would like to be removed for specific discussion, whichever the board desires.
I would like to remove B.
Item B. Okay. Any other items? Okay, so at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve consent agenda items A, C, D, and E.
I move we approve consent agenda items A, C, D, and E as presented.
Motion by Mr. McCutcheon. There's a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Rogers. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, so item B, the consent agenda was removed. Consideration of possible action to approve meal prices for 2019-2020 school year.
Okay. My only question, Mr. Calden, was last month you stated that I believe there was a $60,000, this would produce like a $60,000 profit. Is that correct? What will that be used for?
So last month, I told you that the increased meal prices would generate about $70,000 in additional revenue. Those funds would be utilized going back into the program to replace freezer coolers as we have them wearing out, and it will also be used to buy more of the ovens, make upgrades in that arena, and also the small wares and tools that they have. And then once we get past that cycle, then it'll be, Ms. Bridgers is also, okay, complete thought before that. Ms. Bridgers is also increasing the quantity of food, especially at the secondary level. And then as we go forward, it is to keep increasing the quality of the meals and coming up with new menu options and trying those out for the students to see if we can't increase participation across campuses.
Thank you, Mr. Calden. That's exactly what I wanted to hear, of
Okay.
increasing quality of the food. I make the motion that we approve consent agenda item B.
There's motions, there a second? Motion by Ms. Kriegel, second by Mr. Starnader. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, next item will be under our regular agenda, be consideration of possible action to approve an external auditing service.
Yes, sir. We've asked for different options, and we've looked at this several times, and we are asking that the board select one of these options so we can go forward. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me say that again. Did y'all not hear me? Okay. We've presented this to the board several times. Mr. Calden can make another presentation, but basically, I think he's given you the information but maybe not. So let us know if you'd like more presentation, or if the board would just like to select one. Or make me.
I know this was brought
or
up several months ago, and it was, a topic of discussion for a while. It was pretty important to a couple of individuals. Any one of you guys have a recommendation?
I've had a couple of conversations with Mr. Calden and tried to pin him down on which one he would like, but he's really indifferent. I don't want to speak for him, but if we're talking apples to apples, there's one that's significantly cheaper than the other, and that's Evans and North, however you say the K. If we're getting the same thing, I mean, price can be a factor. I mean, I'm not always a low bid kind of person, but if it's apples to apples, they're $11,000 cheaper.
Mr. Calden, in your mind, are they apples to apples?
One thing, okay, two different ends on this question. I'm going to get to yours, but I'm going to go the long way to get there. We did an RFQ, a request for qualifications. Legally in the state of Texas, an RFQ price cannot be a decision factor. So we didn't ask them specifically with a response in mind that they would give us price on engagements. We did want to know their cost containment. So when they give a price, can they stay within that and not expand? Not come in and tell you, well, it's going to be $10,000 and you get the final bill and it's $40,000. Oh, we added other stuff. We do look at cost containment. We did not specifically ask them for a price on the engagement. Once a firm is selected, that'll be the next thing that we go out and do, is negotiate with them on an engagement letter for board approval before we start the engagement. To specifically address Dr. Kane's question, I believe both firms, well, the 5 responses that we received of the 2 firms that have been given to you, I believe both are equally qualified and could do the job. So from my standpoint, absolutely, I have zero concern on the quality of either firm performing that job. I believe that was your question. I hope I answered it.
So at this time, I'll entertain a motion.
Are we choosing, or are we moving to the next step as far as, I guess, exploring the options of the company?
If you make this recommendation, tomorrow he's going to call and it starts.
Okay.
We're already a little behind, so he probably will maybe even text them tonight and say we're a go.
Right.
Because we're on this schedule that we've got to have, because they're going to do both, the bond funds and our financial audit. So they may be both firms parked outside the door, in fact, and we don't know it.
I'll make the motion, we choose Evans and Knopf as our audit firm.
Motion by Mr. Rogers, is there a second? Second by Ms. Timmerman. Is there any other discussion? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, last item on our agenda will be consideration and possible action to approve the 2019-20 salary schedule. I'm assuming that's why we have a big crowd still left in our meeting. Again, Mr. Collin, you started working on this last night, right?
Yes, sir. Tell her what you want to do.
I made sure I took a prolonged lunch today, so that it would be very, very harebrained of an idea. Okay, so in all honesty, after we've gotten to digest House Bill 3 and all of the requirements, we feel comfortable in requesting for your decision tonight, or your approval tonight, a new salary compensation schedule for the teachers, librarians, counselors, and nurses. We want to move the scale to a starting pay of $51,000. So that would be for a teacher in their very first year of experience. From that, we wanted a little bit of structure, a little bit of reason within the steps on the scale. So for the first couple of years, we have a $500 increase, but we know that starting around years 5 through 15, that's really the sweet spot where you really want to get those teachers in. That's where you're in the heaviest competition with the neighboring districts. And so we added a $1,500 increase at year 5. And then from there, we added a $600 increase for every year thereafter. So your starting increase, or your starting pay would be $51,000, and your year 40 pay would be $75,500. The average increase for a teacher, or for the steps, the average increase per step would be $5,200. When you combine that with where we were last year on the step and going a step increase plus these increases, the average teacher would see a $5,847 increase. That's really the good news that comes out of the teachers, librarians, counselors, and nurses scale. On top of that, we'd also like to recommend a 5.5% increase for our paraprofessional support and auxiliary staff members, and then a 2% increase for our administrative and professional staff members.
Would you clarify our 90-day rule? Because they've been hired administrators in March, April, May, June, July. So when you say all district employees,
Yes,
would you clarify?
So as a practice, we have used the 90-day rule. TRS, when you are in a school district, TRS gives you a year of service credit when you have 90 days during that school year, during that term. We've been utilizing the same rule for newly hired individuals. If you have 90 days of service with us at the time we start the new fiscal year, the new school year, then you're eligible for these increases. Otherwise, if you are within that 90-day window, the expectation is that your pay be set with these increases in mind.
For example, because we didn't hire a bilingual director, but y'all approved it. Let's say we did hire one May 15th, and we said, we want you to be our bilingual director, and we're going to pay you $60,000. And that was May 15th of this year. That person would not get an increase because we just set their salary. But let's even get closer. Let's say this starts September 1?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, on August 31st, if we hired the bilingual director, and we would say, here's what your salary is going to be. There's always that gray area when you hire someone and say, here's what your salary is. Now, if you're a new employee, okay, and this is kind of confusing. So any new employee that we set, we say, because most of the people we've told, I know that some people I've talked to said, you will not get, this is your salary for the 1920 school year.
New
Okay.
employees and new positions. Mhm.
Right, because I just wanted to clarify the all district, because some people want to call you and say, we didn't get a raise. Yeah, because they hadn't been here 90 days.
And it's the same general context that goes into the deferred compensation, the Christmas payment. you know, you have to have a cutoff at some point. We set the cutoff on that as, I jokingly say, August 32nd. As long as you are here before September 1, you qualify for that payment. So there's always a cutoff in there somewhere. We've always, as a practice, used that 90-day rule. As long as you've put in 90 days with us, you're eligible for the increase. Otherwise, the expectation is that when your salary is set, the increase is taken into account.
And just for point of clarification, I saw, I think, a question from Ms. Kriegel. I believe you were talking about the administrators and the paraprofessional support staff, auxiliary staff that are on essentially where there are percentages applied. You're not talking about the teacher, nurse, counselor, librarian step schedule. As a 16-year teacher, nurse, counselor, librarian, you would go on step 16.
Even though you just.
Teachers, librarian, counselor, nurse schedule is rigid regardless of when you're hired.
Thank you.
The only thing that would happen is if you are not here on day one, it would be prorated for the 185 days out of 187 days.
Just want to clarify that, because you're going to get a call.
Any other questions for Mr. Calden?
I'd like to make a comment.
Go ahead.
I just want to thank Mr. Calden and all his staff for, I know that everybody's been working really hard on this all summer, and everybody's been anxiously awaiting what we're going to do, so.
Well, it also helped to know that the board, to a person, has been really, really letting staff know that they would be happy and would embrace the highest possible pay raise for staff that we could. So it helps when we have that kind of support from the board, and I
And I
thank
know
you
there's a
for
lot of
that.
other districts that have come out ahead of us. We intentionally waited because we wanted to see how much we could possibly maximize. And I want to tell you, thank you very much for the time that you and the whole administrative staff in making this a priority moving forward.
I appreciate your words, but it really wouldn't be possible without leadership from the board giving us direction on where to go. As you are well aware, you know, we started a whole lot smaller. Our raise, if we were going to be loud and be first, it was going to be a whole lot closer to 2,500. And in all honesty, could it have been more? It could have been more. But at the same time, when you're handed House Bill 3 and about 4 days to digest it, you don't really, you know, you don't want to overextend yourself and not know how that's going to be in the future. So we appreciate your leadership in giving us the direction on not only what to strive for, but also giving us the time to better understand what we're trying to digest so that we can do what's best for our staff. So thank you for your leadership on that.
Okay, at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the 2019-2020 salary schedule.
You may get 7 motions here.
I am extremely happy and proud to make a motion to approve this absolutely fantastic salary schedule for the
good
next
supporter.
school year. Yippee!
We have a motion by Ms. Timmerman, second by Mr. Schofield. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Congratulations. Go ahead, Ms.
And Board,
Bridges. You need-
just so you're aware, that graphic that we just showed, as soon as we adjourn, I'm going to go down to my office and send that in an email to all.
I think somebody's already beat you to it because I saw some pictures being taken in the audience.
The salary schedule document, yes, ma'am, it'll go out in that email also, and then, yes, ma'am.
You better hurry, Ms. Bridges. I think some people have already beat you to it. Okay, at this time, I entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. McCutcheon, a second? Second. Star Nader, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries 7-0.
All right. Thank you, board. Thank you, board.